One second. That's okay, we are live now. So in last stream, I added this feature where in my website it fetches all the videos or streams. Those are uploaded on my channel, and one second. Yeah, so we uploaded. Sorry, so we added a component here. This is like one single component which fetches all this YouTube data, and it displays a list of videos in the main page. So what we are going to do today is, so this is like a simple ES6 class based component. So what I really want to do is like try the functional component and use the hooks API to fetch this YouTube data. So let's start. Hmm. Yeah. So the first thing is I really don't know how do you fetch data. Sorry, how do you make API calls inside functional, or how to do it using hooks. So we will be probably just going to Google this just along the way. Yeah. So we just cut this. Sorry. Mm, okay, so we have a state videos and okay, so not really. Uh, how do we do that? Okay, so let's keep it this. So first I have to like React hooks use state. I don't know all the syntax and everything by heart using the state hook. Okay. Okay, so how do you use a use state? Okay, so you import it from the React package, and this is your state variable, and this is your set state setter. It's like equivalent to your set state that is used inside that is used in the component. Sorry, not class based component. Yeah. So use state, and you pass it and like initial value here, right? Okay, and you call it. Okay, this looks simple enough. So what we could do here is so my state variable name is like videos. Okay, so right, so we make this functional class uh, function, sorry, we don't need this, so we'll just probably do this, and we don't need the render. Sorry, we don't need this component mount method, and yeah, right, we don't you don't need to use the render when you are using functional component. Okay, so, a simple return should be enough. Okay, export default YouTube and okay, so so this is this dot state dot videos. Okay. We import it from the React. I'm not sure. Yeah, right. So the I see the list of like hooks that use callback, use context, use debug value, use effect. I don't actually know any of them, but use state is what we need right now. So we'll use that. Sorry. Videos. Right. Get video. Not really get video because that's a different call. We need to set videos. Yeah. So this will state. This will initialize or give a value to our state variable, and use state, and this is our initial value. Yeah. Okay. So what I'm gonna do is, just to make sure this works, I'll just copy a copy video URL, and yeah, so we have it like so. We could like initialize this with one. Okay. Get videos. Okay. We don't need this. Or do we need that? Because there is no this here. Account. Yeah, this should be straightforward. Yeah. Okay. Videos. Map. Video. Snippet. Uh, Sorry. So this is not probably. I think there is this whole bunch of this. This is not just URL, but we could like one second. So there is a lot of JSON data that comes from YouTube, but for now we could like just test this. So what I'm trying to do here is I want to see that there is like if we can initialize as in like empty array or with one value. We'll just try first as in like empty array, but and then we'll also initialize it with one value. So how do I actually comment this? All right, yeah. So and this would have like video. I think yeah, video is right. I'm still not sure. Like yeah. So we save this and it reloads, and we are parsing error JSI must only be assigned non-empty. Okay, so it needs, this should be like, yeah. Okay, let's go down here. Right, so there is no data, so it only sort of, so it rendered this tight heading, but it didn't render the data, and that's what we sorry, so that's what we were exactly hoping for, that okay so that's what we were hoping for, that okay, we'll initialize it with an empty array. So let's try this. Sorry. uh, I don't know, my mouse has starting to act all weird. I just start slash really. uh, I need I actually needed that URL. Right. Right. Oh yeah, this is, let's see. So I needed this, and this should render at least like one video. But let's see. Yeah, I'm not sure if the data is fetched or it. Okay, please try again. Playback ID. But anyway, we actually got we at least rendered YouTube embed. I'm not. I think there must be like something wrong with this. Anyway, so we could just go back. So this works, and we'll just go back to how. Yeah, and then now. Hmm, you know, snippet dot. Okay, now we got like a empty state. Sorry, empty array rendered. Then we initialize it with one item, and now what we'll do now is fetch the data from, sorry, so we'll fetch the data from YouTube API. So how do you fetch the data? I don't know, so we'll just google that. Yeah, react hooks API call. Yeah, managing API calls, bit source. Robin, this guy is good. Like I see, like I find a lot of post related beginner related post on this blog. I also follow him on like Twitter, and so we okay. So we'll use effect. Okay, React hooks use effect. 1 second. Yeah, using the effect hook. Hooks are a new addition in React 16.8. They let you use state and other features without writing a class. Okay, we have figured that out till now. So use effect similar to component did mount and component did update. Oh, sorry. My camera is like hanging upside down, so if like any notification shows up, I have to like tilt my head and look at it. So use effect. Okay, so how do you use this? There is this use effect, then there is a callback function passed inside that, and you just do whatever you want inside that. Okay. mm, I'm not sure if you can like set effects without clear, yeah, but we could try that. Yeah, now so let's try that. Use effect. So we, so use effect. I'm not sure if this is going to work. Do you have to like pass use something else if you can set a state inside use effect? But we'll try that. Yeah, sorry. Use effect and so and this is our API call. It's already this is using Axios and it's already pre-configured. So we can get videos. Okay. But then and it should also have like catch. I don't know if yeah, well, let's so this will give like a response and we could so set videos and what we pass on that inside response. So what we'll do is like also log this response. So log response again, and we'll also see like what's getting. So this is like my best debugging tools method. Just log everything. Like okay, that video response and console log. Okay, so yeah, pass. Adjacent JSX elements must be wrapped. You want JSX fragment, okay, but no, we don't want that. So, right, sure, this should work. Okay, rendered more works than during the previous render. Uh, well, let's look at the Robin guys. Okay, so how he's doing it. Okay, so there is use state. Sorry, his, and there is this data videos. Right. So response should be, I think. Okay, well, actually, do we have a log or something here to look at? Let's reload. Okay, the okay, so what's happening here is, oh my god, so there were like 10, 20, 30 calls, something like that, yeah. So this is not good, so yeah, it's gonna crash. I'll just close it. Okay, so let's see how to use that. Okay, const data dot heads so data result dot data. Okay, he's using wait a single wait. I'm not sure how that would make a difference, but let's see. Wait, right? Okay, and we got response data. Then you set videos, and this should right? Yeah. And probably also need to declare this somewhere as a sync function. Sync. Did he do it? Yeah, right. That's a sync. Yeah. It's synchronous. Okay. Yeah, well, let's see. Okay, that crashed or something did happen. Okay. Owning an effect function must not return anything besides a function, which is used for cleanup. Looks like you wrote use effect or return the promise, instead write the same function and call it immediately. Uh, Set data. Okay, it results. Sorry, it waits for the data. And are we using actually the same hook? Yeah, it's use effect. This one is also use effect. Yeah. And this is before return. Yeah. State. So yeah, it's. I'm like you could see here the okay. Yeah, this one is also like a same function. Yeah, right. It just like hmm, what I'm doing wrong here. Response set videos and you know what? Use this. Let's also set that and then like empty array. Let's see. Okay, so rotate effect or return the promise. Instead, write the sync function inside your effect and call it immediately. Okay. Destroy is not a function. I could like just try this, but I really don't want to do this here. I so I want to figure out wait. No, you know what? Let's just let's copy this. We'll try this first, and that's a saying that's right. It's waiting. Catch console error, and should like okay. We don't need to return this, but we'll just log this items. Okay, so this is array, and we'll just set the videos using this items. This is your YouTube API data. Okay, let's see if that works. Nope. Warning, not return anything besides a function. Okay, but we are not returning anything. I think probably. Let's say there is like the effect hook. Now clean up. Sometimes we want to run some additional code after React. I really want to do that. Detailed explanation. Effects with cleanup. When you run your application, you should summon into a nasty loop, right? Okay, so why didn't you say that, man? Yeah, so he documents it here that the effect hook called use effect is used to fetch the data with Axios from the API and to set the data in the local state of the component with the state hooks update function. The promise resolving happens with a sync await. However, when you run your application, you should stumble into a nasty loop. Yeah, that's what we are facing, a nasty, like very nasty loop. And the effect, because we are setting the state if after every data fetch the component update and the effect runs again. Okay, so what he's saying is this effect, this use effect runs each and every time the component changes. Yeah, the component updates because we're state. So yeah, so it triggers us. So we are setting a sort of like state update here. So yeah, set videos using this. So we trigger a component state update, and the component gets re-rendered. So this use effect runs again and it updates the state again, and so you got like a big nasty loop. But we only want to fetch data when the component mounts. Okay, that's why you can provide an empty array as second argument to the effect hook to avoid activating it on component update, but only for the mounting of the component. Okay, so repeat is the hook update depends. If one of the variable changes, the hook runs again. If the array with the variables is empty, the hook doesn't run when updating because it doesn't have to watch any variables. I didn't really understand this. Let's go through it again. That's why we only want. That's why you can provide an empty array as second argument to the effect hook to avoid activating in one component update, but only for the mounting of the component. Okay. The second argument can be used to define all the variables allocated in this array. Allocated. The second argument can be used to define all the variables located in this array on which the hook depends. Okay, if one of them there is one last catch in the code. We are using a string await to fetch data from the according to the function returns an implicit response. Okay, then a cleanup function or nothing. Okay. Hmm. 95. I don't know. Somebody there was a Twitter notification. Okay, so you state this is actually getting a bit. Okay, so you define so you already have a sort of defined function, right? Hmm. But I don't want to define the call here. So how do we, but yeah, we could just try to do this first. I'm not sure if he like moves it at some point out of it, but okay. So where we were, yeah. So there is like this is the empty. I don't know why if it is like why it is array, but let's make it work. And okay, this didn't really okay, at least, but this still ran like 2 times, but that's okay. Uh, we can live with that, yeah. So let's go, yeah, it's fetching all the data, but there is like a one new another error that we have to deal with. That is warning: an effect function must not return anything besides a function which is used for cleanup. It looks like your wrote use effect or return the promise. Okay, we need to remove this and okay, but if you are using await, you need to add that async again. So can we do like I don't know why this is like a empty array, why this is not an object. I really don't know. Shall we try this like provide it as in like empty object? Okay, that ran into like whole different. Okay, or should it be like I think this is the reason why. So if you like but we have our this data. Let's see that it's so this is I'm not sure, this is like I'm guessing that uh, our state variable state data is like an array. So and this is what he also has, that it's an array here. So videos, set videos, and I don't need this async because asking us to, so the react says that you should remove this. So with this like wrap it inside a function, yeah. Most fetch, sorry, fetch video and so, mm, and let's declare this function as async. It's a synchronous function. URL, right? This is right. But mm-hmm. and this should be right. So I have this sort of uh, doubt that okay, so it's a function. Okay. I still don't know. Well, let's try. Okay, there is like another error. I think you need to call that function. Uh, Straight data, yeah, right. And yeah, that's why. And just call the function. So yeah, that's what I had, like how it would set the state data if we're setting it from the outside of the function. That how it would know when to set the data. This should work. Okay, it called two times, but this shouldn't call two times. Okay, right, yeah. So we see the data also gets in the say in the state, and yeah. Okay, this is good, but still I don't really want to call it here. I want this to be modular and um, so you write like a get. So this is just like a wrapping thing for that. Yeah. Uh, it's not even a single function. Yeah. So you could just copy this. Let's okay, and we set the state using set radius, and this should be a response. This is like just one three line. So in the end, it's like just two three lines of code. So fetching this data from API is like hardly one two lines code, but we are like writing 10 lines here, and then like 1 2 3 5 6. So we are writing about something like 10 15 lines for 3 lines of code. So that's like weird, but okay. hooks add certain functionalities which I don't really know about, that everybody is hyped about the hooks. uh, I think it's something has to do with the suspense, that uh, there when the final support for the suspense lands, uh, you could like do what they call it, asynchronous rendering of the components. I don't even know what the term means. Like you could your data. Yeah, let's leave it there. Okay, if I save this, uh, yeah, that worked. And this time it actually called, not one time, but this is like, yeah. But this is still like calling two functions here. mm, uh, uh, what we could do is try to see, I think we somewhere hit a loop, but last time we tried that, but we could still try it. Okay, this is our response, and let's log this response and set it. Set the videos and save this response. Let's see if this works. Mm, actually, this worked. Yeah, it should be the same thing. Yeah, so I'm actually a bit surprised that he didn't separate this call, but I could get it. Yeah, right. Like we are total noob here, that it could get like a lot of confusing to move it into a separate module. So he just did the call there. So let's format this. And now we have so we converted a class based component into, so 15. Why it's I okay, right, yeah, so this is the one. So we converted a class component into a functional component, and we sort of used two hooks. One is for use state and another is use effect. Use state is a hook we use to like initialize your initial state, and it also provides, so the first argument, so the first thing that you get out of it is your state variable. The second is like your set stater or handler that you can use to set your state. Yeah. And there is another hook that is use effect. So okay, now I get it. So how use effect works is on each in the class based component, the so there are like life cycles. So the component did mount or component did mount sort of gets called whenever your each time your component gets rendered. So that's how this hook also works, like whenever so they don't have really any component, sorry, life cycles in the functional component. So they added like a hook. Okay, so use effect. Okay, so this use effect will run each time whenever there is like any change in your state data, or whenever this gets rendered, it will run it each time. So it's sort of like similar thing, that okay, so the component did mount, you're always sure that okay, so whenever your before your component gets yeah, so whenever your component gets rendered, the component did mount will always always get called. And that's how also use effect works. Okay, that it will also get called whenever there is a any change, or whenever your component renders your state changes, this will also get called each time. Now it makes sense. So let's push this to production. Yeah. Move, move to hook and use effect hook. So this should trigger whenever there is like so when I push this code to the sorry, so when I push this commit to the GitHub, it's connected to the Netlify, and this should trigger a Netlify fresh build, and it should automatically deploy it to the online hosted website. Yeah, I don't think this should have any problem with the build, but you're not. Let's make sure, because you can't be always sure that it's not working. So there was some issue I faced, that was like, so also, so in the start of the when I started the site, so I made changes in the structure of the markdown format, and there was this one issue that the build would succeed on the local, but sorry, so yeah, so the build would succeed on the local but not on the production on this Netlify online. So I wasn't really sure like what's happening, and I actually looked for this error and I couldn't really find anything. So just to make like so just to try it, I just triggered the build one or two, three times, and that's when it went through. So I was like, okay, this is weird. So After that, what I did was like removed all the cache data and everything. I also like removed. I think this build is completed. Deploy in progress. Okay. Okay, yeah, it's published. Let's check. Let's make sure that this is content is now available offline. Let's just make sure that this is the fresh version and this is not just an old cache from my computer. Yeah, this works. Uh, so what I really have, um, this is like okay. Um, so, so so this is what I had some ideas related to do the stream that okay to fetch list of all videos that is done, fetch list on build time using Gatsby third party plugin. Uh, yeah, we can try that, but there is like one issue with that. So I push like a weekly update on the blog, so that instead of like depending on this API call to go through and the like let's see such a yeah, so the site depends on this API call to go through that. Okay, this should work. Otherwise all of this data is like HTML data, and I also want so it's like HTML markup, and that's the benefit of, or that's the point of using Gatsby, right? That you want all of your data to be static, but I'm not sure I really want to do this right now because that would also so whenever there is like a, so what it would do is like right now we did build, right? So there are now 1 2 3 4 5 6 7 8, yeah, 7 8 videos. So whenever I'll do build how many videos are there, uh, it will fetch that, and that's what would get stored. So unless I push a build like that would so sorry, so unless I do like a next build that would be like 6 months down the line, 1 year, 2 years, it won't fetch any data even if I'm like streaming on a daily basis. Mm, but yeah, that's the point of using static websites, right? You want all of your data to be static mostly, for the most part. So we could do that in the next stream, that fetch list of this or fetch your YouTube data on build time using the Gatsby third party plugin, and that plugin is for actually the version 3. What I really so what I was also like just copy the same plugin code, but create like version 4 YouTube sorry, so create a like a YouTube API version 4 plugin. So this is, yeah, this is version 3, yeah. Yeah, but not. So the YouTube uploads plugin is still no go, but yeah, this we can still do this. Or like publish, so I really wanted to try to give it a try for to create like a Gatsby plugin. So they have like made it like super simple, that there is like great documentation to create a Gatsby plugin. But since I was using this functionality, um, I thought I'll just create it. So let's, you know what, let's Google this, like YouTube. So if there is like a version 4 API available, I'll use that and then I'll create a plugin. So version YouTube version 4 API. Uh, is there like a YouTube API version 4? YouTube data API. Yeah, it's version 3. Oh, okay. API Explorer. Yeah, it's version 3 actually. That's okay. We could like still do the build time feature in the next stream until it's like past midnight here, 1:30. So I'll just go to sleep, and yeah, I'll see you next time. Yeah, bye.